When we use the term fundamentalist, we are usually describing some group which has become radical in its beliefs. Normally, the term is used to describe religions, but it's also been applied to other groups with extreme positions. In this series, I will be using the term in its general context, but the idea of fundamentalism comes from a very specific movement in Protestant Christianity, a movement which has its origins in 19th century evangelical doctrines. One of the core ideas in fundamentalism is an evangelical perspective called dispensationalism. Developed in the 1800s by a pastor named John Darby, dispensationalism takes its name from the division of time into 7 major periods called dispensations. Each period is characterized by a revelation of God and a test of obedience for humanity, with many of them ending in punishment for failing these tests. The 7 dispensations are innocence, which is the time of the Garden of Eden; conscience, which is from original sin to the flood; government, from after the flood to the time of Abraham; promise, from the time of Abraham to the time of Moses; law, from the time of Moses to the crucifixion of Jesus; grace, the resurrection of Jesus to the millennial kingdom. This is the period which dispensationalists say we are now in. And the millennial kingdom, which is a literal 1,000-year reign of Jesus centered around Jerusalem. In addition to its description of history, dispensationalism holds 3 major principles. The first is a hermeneutic approach that stresses the literal fulfillment of Old Testament promises to the nation of Israel. The second is a consistent, literal interpretation of the Bible. And the third is a belief that the actions of God on earth are for the glory of God, and not for the salvation of mankind. To a dispensationalist, the emphasis is not on the time periods themselves, but the method by which God chooses to interact with humanity. They view this whole process as the progressive nature of God's plan. It's easy to see the mark that dispensationalism has made on fundamentalist thinkers. Ideas like an inerrant, literal Bible, a central concept within the fundamentalist community, are obvious. But dispensationalism has also had a more subtle influence on fundamentalist thinking. For instance, the narrative of history as a story progressing to a specific ending. That is, the idea that all of existence is moving towards one final showdown, is a concept rooted firmly in dispensationalism. Since its inception, the doctrine has served to shape the face of Christianity on the North American continent, and has influenced Christian thinkers throughout the world. One of the most important works of dispensationalism is the Scofield Reference Bible. Created in the 1900s, this King James version of the Bible contains references for a dispensational interpretation of the text. This Bible was often used as a reference source for many of the fundamentalist Bible colleges that sprung up during the 20th century. Modern fundamentalism draws its name from a series of essays called The Fundamentals, a testimony to the truth. Written around 1910, this 12-volume, 90-essay series attempts to establish a core Christian doctrine. It deals with a wide range of topics like the inerrancy of the Bible, heresy of certain Christian groups, the historical accuracy of the Bible, and the folly of evolution. Written for evangelical congregations, these essays were largely a reaction to a new trend in liberal theology, which, according to Theopedia, was emanating mostly from Germany. The fundamentals can be credited with sparking the fundamentalist movement in the United States, and by 1919, most Protestant denominations in the country recognized fundamentalist organizations within their ranks. In the same year, William Bell Riley, a leading fundamentalist figure, founded the World Christian Fundamentals Association, an organization which acted against liberal theology and later the teaching of evolution. During the 1920s, the WCFA began to combat what it saw as secular teachings in the public education system. It lobbied many southern states to enact laws against teaching evolution, and found success in Tennessee, which enacted a law banning evolution in its school system. It was there, in 1925, that the WCFA became embroiled in a major trial, the state of Tennessee versus John Thomas Scopes, the famed Scopes monkey trial. The WCFA fielded William Jennings Bryan as lead counsel for the prosecution. By the time of the trial, Bryan was a leader in the organization's layman movement and also a respected politician nationwide. Ultimately, Scopes was found guilty, but later released on a technicality. The fundamentalist effort to prevent the teaching of evolution yielded varying degrees of success until 1968, when the Supreme Court ruled in Epperson versus Arkansas that the ban on teaching evolution was unconstitutional. In the 1960s, a series of Supreme Court cases saw the resurgence of the fundamentalist conflict in the U.S., chief among them Eagle versus Vitale, which found school-sanctioned prayer unconstitutional, and Abington Township School District versus Shemp, which found school-sponsored Bible reading unconstitutional. In the 70s, Jerry Falwell worked with the Moral Majority, a political action committee that focused on evangelical causes like abortion and homosexuality. In the late 80s, a prominent televangelist named Pat Robertson founded the Christian Coalition to further the religious right's political agenda. These two men became prominent leaders in the religious right and worked with the Republican Party, who had seen great success in the South since Nixon's Southern strategy, to advance a religious political agenda. From the 60s onward, political activism would be the lens through which most Americans viewed the fundamentalist movement. This perspective inevitably led to an increase in tension between fundamentalists and America at large.